Hi, we're back. You're listening to The Pit Stop. That's with two T's. I'm Stephen Foss.
And I'm Leo's son.
And you are listening to WSVC Radio. All right, so if you guys remember from last week, how we do it is we take turns presenting each other information about, local stuff in the area, travel, history, all that fun stuff. So last week I presented. This week it's Leo's turn. So Leo, what are we talking about tonight?
Well, Stephen, this one actually works for the time frame of, late October, early November. Okay. It all starts with George Washington. So, those historical markers you see along the road?
I do indeed, yes.
Okay. So there's this one on the length of Route 30 and the intersection of Route 91. It's called 12 Mile Camp.
Right. The one, right near the right by the airport. Yeah.
Right, exactly. It's on the approach end of runway 24 at Arnold Palmer Regional Airport. Anyways.
Okay.
So, let me read you the description. And let's just say that these historical markers, they have a surface level, thing to them. There's not really a lot of depth.
Right. Well, I mean, they are, they're, very small.
Yeah, they don't want people, it's like people who stop there and, read them, not like people driving at, 60 miles per hour.
Exactly. Most people will fly right past that thing and not
literally fly above it.
That's true. It's by an airport.
It's also in a weird location.
This is also very true.
Anyways, let me read you the description.
All right.
12 Mile Camp. George Washington in 1758 set up a camp a mile north of this point while building Forbes Road. In 1774, Fort Shippen was built at the same site. That's it.
Wait a second. So this historical marker isn't at the spot that 12 Mile Camp was.
Right.
It's just within a mile radius?
I thought that was interesting, too. And there is a thought process behind why.
Okay.
Apparently, so the Pennsylvania Historical and Museum Commission is the one who was responsible for putting this. Guess when this mile marker was put down, or historical marker?
Oh, okay. I have no idea. Let me just say 1960, just to say something.
Dedicated on the Tuesday of December 10th, 1946.
Oh.
It's a little old.
That's been there for a while, huh?
I think the thought process is what I can also make sense, is that since it's a mile south of where the marker is, where the site used to be, it's placed along Route 30 where it would be seen more popular instead of a random road.
That's very fair. Although it would kind of be cool if it was just by a random road for those people who are just really into it.
Right.
Yeah.
But it also, these historical markers, it's for people to see.
Important, history. I get that.
Latrobe, as a city of first, it has to be said that having the first president of the United States sleep near 3 miles near Latrobe is something.
That is actually really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So
George Washington.
So this is an interesting story, right?
Yeah.
So I'll start with the first part, the George Washington 1758.
Okay, let's go.
So how old are you, Stephen?
I am 19 years old.
All right. You know how old George Washington was in 1758?
22.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I got that right.
Yeah, he's in his early 20s, 21, 22.
I knew he started his military career pretty young, so that was, wow, I'm kind of impressed with myself.
Right.
All right.
So this has to do with the French and Indian War, which occurred from 1756 to 1763 or something like that.
Okay.
So during this time period, pretty much Westmoreland County is considered the Wild West. It is the Wild West. This is the frontier.
Yeah.
Right?
Huh. Yeah.
And so George Washington is sent as an emissary for the British government to talk with local native tribes and see what the French are up to during this time period. And he's the one who kind of accidentally is one of the reasons that the French and Indian War starts.
Yeah.
Do you know the story?
I do know the story. Yeah.
All right.
Whoopsies.
Do you want to tell it?
I don't know if I could tell it that well.
Okay. Well, the year is 1753. He's with a native group, and they capture a French group, and somehow in between the confusion, the French commander gets scalped. So that's a lot of tension in this area at the time.
Whoopsies.
Right. And
okay.
He has a lot of history in this area. I'll just say that.
It's actually kind of cool, right?
Right. Anyways, so I have to we have to come up to the reasons of how he ended up in this area. So
Okay. So we're backtracking a little.
right, so we're gonna go with later on in 1755, since he like knows the area very well. He's an uprising, star in like he's a colonel of the Virginia militia, right?
Yeah.
Or a captain, something like that.
He's higher ranking.
Right. But so the thing is at the time is that since he's a provisional like commander of a militia,
Okay.
he's still underneath like a British like lieutenant.
Okay.
So like even if you're a colonel, they don't see you that. And here's like a funny quote.
Gotcha.
Washington was said to babble with fury when British regular officers expressed their disdain of provincial officers and soldiers.
Babble with fury.
Right.
Really?
Yeah.
What a line.
He has a quote he's in 1755, he sent on with General Braddock.
For Braddock's Road?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And so Forbes Road doesn't exist at this time. Okay. So
right.
Braddock's Road is from northern Virginia and goes to like Pittsburgh, right? So like winding up more like south of Pittsburgh, kind of to like the west side of it, if that makes sense.
I think so. Yeah.
And so this road is like more developed at the time.
Okay.
And that's where we have Braddock's defeat.
Yeah.
And George Washington was really lucky. He only got 4 bullet holes like in his tunic.
Yeah, in his coat. Right? Yeah, I remember hearing about that, and I was like, "What? That's so crazy!" Like he could have been shot 4 times.
Right.
That's wild.
A lot of the other like British officers like died. Like General Braddock, he's dead.
He died. In that
one. After the
womp.
after the battle, George Washington wrote that the British officers felt well, like cowardly dogs of soldiers.
Oof.
Or sorry, the British officers fought well, but the cowardly dogs of soldiers did not. Meanwhile, he compared the Virginia men who are behaved like men and died like soldiers. He's a Virginian first, right?
That's fair. This is pre-revolution, so people were loyal to their states.
Well, they still saw themselves as British, but it's interesting to think.
Well, that's a good point too, I suppose.
It's interesting to think that during this time period that like you start seeing this like independence come from like, the group.
Yeah, I get that. All right, so what's next?
So after Braddock's defeat, along comes General Forbes to take on Fort Duquesne,
Duquesne.
I think that's where the name Duquesne University comes from. Is the French fort.
Guys, he finally figured it out. Guys, he finally got it. Excuse me. Very sorry. Okay, so Forbes is in charge now. Right. And this is where the road comes in. Yeah? Mm-hmm. Forbes Road.
Right, which is kind of like a portion of Route 30.
Oh, really?
It goes from like Pittsburgh to Calisari, Pennsylvania.
Where on earth is that?
Calisari?
Calisari. I've never heard of this place, actually. Are you looking it up? We better make it quick. We don't want our runtime to be too long.
All right, well.
Okay, for another time.
Anyways, it's interesting that George Washington advocates for Braddock's Road because it's developed and he has like his reasons for it, but also because it would put Virginia in a better position to have like all these troops go through it. But General Forbes like disagrees with him, and he says to Washington, "I am now at the bottom of their scheme against this new road," and he chastised him, telling Washington that was a shame for any officer to be concerned in, because Pennsylvania at this time is very dense. It's wooded, right? And the area we're in is like between the 2 mountains they had to cross.
Okay.
So while, Forbes, he has like his reasons for building a road, afterwards he's probably like, he like says like, it was probably a better idea to just use Braddock's Road.
In hindsight, right?
Right. But during the builder of, Forbes Road is where we get Fort Ligonier.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, if Fort Ligonier wasn't called that until December of 1758, they started building it in September of 1758.
Gotcha.
And it was called the Loyal Hannah Post.
That's not as cool.
Yeah, Loyal Hannah is like derived from like an Indian like the Delaware group like Lawi Hane, which means middle of the river.
That's a cool name, by the way.
And then it's called Ligonier.
Gotcha.
It's named after Sir John Ligonier.
I do not know of this man.
Yes, he was the commander-in-chief of Great Britain, apparently, at the time.
Fantastic.
But,
okay.
It's really interesting that the fort, in this time frame, it has, like, 3 major events, and then it's kind of, like, forgotten.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so there's the Battle of Fort Ligonier, right?
Yeah.
That's in October 12th.
Mhm.
And that's like 1 month after they started building it.
Yeah.
And then 1 month afterwards is that friendly fire incident with George Washington.
Yeah. Whoopsies.
Yeah, so, it's actually...
It's kind of a whoopsie.
There's this... So, George Mercer versus George Washington.
Yeah.
They're told to go out to the woods to find, like, this enemy group they contact. Because, the French kind of did a lot of damage to, like, Fort Ligonier, like, casualty-wise. So they're a little worried, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you see two large groups of men. What are you going to do? You're going to fire upon them. So this is...
You're not even going to ask them, like, anything first?
Right, so this is why, like, George Washington is, showing his bravery by waving a sword telling the men not to fire. But they did lose some people. But they did get a prisoner who told them that the French were planning to leave Fort Duquesne soon.
So, okay.
Just, like...
It's kind of useful.
Yeah, like, pretty much, like, 2 weeks later, Fort Duquesne is taken, which is now Fort Pitt.
Yeah.
And all that remains of that is the blockhouse. It used to be a lot bigger.
Yeah.
But it's just like the Fort Ligonier has such a short like time frame of events happen.
It does, but it's kind of cool because it's the inciting incident for a lot of bigger events that would happen. Yeah?
Right. It's a lot of local history.
Yeah. We should be proud of this.
Right, exactly.
This is like, what, a 15, 20-minute drive from right here?
Right, exactly. And that's where 12 Mile Camp comes in.
Is it? Is it?
The average like walking distance for a man back then, including like 1,000 like men for like like a regiment.
Yeah,
it's 14 miles.
Okay.
So, considering where Fort Ligonier is, 12 miles later, where are you gonna end up?
12 Mile Camp.
Roughly around that area.
Man, we are so smart.
Right. And there is like a little confusion because I'll go into the other part, which is Lochry's blockhouse that's connected to Fort Shippen.
Okay.
But Lochry's blockhouse and Fort Shippen are built near 12 Mile Run, which is
that is confusing.
The stream, and then it connects to 14 Mile Run. So
that's even more confusing.
So it's either 12 Mile Camp is named after the distance of like a walk, or it's named after a stream. I think it's more related to the stream.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I couldn't find it.
I would have guessed the walk, me personally. Oh my gosh, this is too confusing.
Right, it is confusing.
So, it is named after the stream, 12 Mile Stream, that connects to 14 Mile Stream?
Yeah.
That's too many numbers.
Right, exactly. and when I was searching, there's not a lot of information in 12 Mile Camp. There's like...
Oh, there's not?
There's like other 12 Mile camps, and it's like one's in Michigan. It's just because that's distance of like the actual...
So this was a thing that happened more than once?
No. Like, it's just like physical area.
Oh, okay.
Like when you're naming things, it's physical things.
Gotcha.
Because there's another historical marker called 12 Springs, where General Braddock was.
This is too many 12s.
Right. And maybe it's just a good number to count from. I don't know.
Revolutionary boys really like the number 12.
Right.
Or something like that.
Anyways, after, they capture Fort Duquesne, Washington, he served like a good time. He retires from the Virginia militia.
Mm-hmm.
And I told you the reason why is because he's not paid during this time, actually.
He's not?
Like, from the British, like from the militia side he is. But the British, he was like acting as an aide, a voluntary aide. He was pretty much an unpaid intern.
What?
To General General Braddock. So there's just a lot like right, exactly. And he couldn't get a commission into the British military as a colonel. And there's this historian I remember saying that this might be a reason why during the Revolutionary War he became the leader of the Continental Army.
Because the British didn't pay him?
They didn't give him a promotion.
They didn't give him... Wow.
Right.
They didn't pay him and they didn't give him a promotion.
Right.
So he just switched to American side. That's... Wow.
Yeah.
Incredibly uncool of the British.
Yeah, I know. I mean...
If they had just paid him, what would history look like?
Exactly. He was literally an unpaid intern for like his like early days.
Yeah, that's wild.
One of his like captains, Thomas Bullitt, said of Washington when he left that he was a punctual observance of his duties and that he had the frankness, sincerity, and a certain openness of soul, which are fine words for a fine man, I guess.
Indeed. High praise for a man who deserves high praise. Right. Indeed.
So, anyways, we go on to Fort Shippen.
Which is where?
Also near 12 Mile Run.
This is getting too confusing for me.
Right. I think the physical locations are like slightly different, but like they put them in the same marker.
Okay.
And it's also because they're right by Forbes Road, which is like
Okay.
a strategic point.
Very.
So it happens to be that this is the point where like multiple people are like making history, I guess.
So is Fort Shippen also, because 12 Mile Camp was also kind of a supply camp, right? Like a rest stop.
It was like a temporary like shelter. Like
Right.
they
It was
didn't
a
build like
very-
a physical object from like a temple.
Yeah, it was just, we're going to stop here for a while.
It's by the road. It's
And recoup.
It's flat. Yeah.
Yeah, and just recoup. So is Shippen kind of the same way?
It was. That's pretty much the thing. It's a stop along Forbes Road.
Mm-hmm.
The reason for this is that Indian attacks got more severe on this side of the frontier. The government couldn't really do much about it, so they actually repaired Fort Ligonier in what is it 1774.
Okay.
So they're restoring Fort Ligonier, and then they're raising up all these other forts, including Fort Shippen, along Forbes Road. Because Forbes Road also connects to Hannistown, which is the first county seat of Westmoreland.
Yeah.
That's where we got like our like government.
We should do a different
That's
show
a different thing.
on historic Hannistown, because that is cool.
Yeah,
But we'll cover that one later.
it's all connected, Steven. It's all connected.
Connect the dots.
And Latrobe isn't even a thing at this time.
Yeah, that's true. We should get into the foundings of Latrobe, because it's way after this, right?
Right. It's like 1820.
Yeah, like way almost 100 years later.
But
So,
that's a different story for a different time.
different story, different day, different
Right.
podcast episode.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, moving on.
So Fort Shippen, it's raised in the year 1774.
Okay.
It's named after Edward Shippen because it was a petition to the governor, and he just happened to sit on the council. So like, how do you get money for a fort? You might as well name it
after the dude that you want the money from. Huh?
Right, exactly.
Makes sense. Can't really fault him for that.
The Fort Shippen, it's also a little confusing because it's also called Captain John Proctor's fort.
Oh my goodness me.
Right. So they're like the same fort.
Same fort, two different names.
And it's not like I couldn't find any like drawings or anything, but like I imagine it was like smaller. Like it could have just been like a couple buildings.
Yeah.
Like
which makes sense
It's
that
not-
I've never heard of this if it was something that was kind of small and temporary.
because I think it's either that like something's built on it, which it's either like what the Latrobe 30 Plaza
Yeah.
or the airport, which is like it's probably hard to find much stuff of it, except Lochry's blockhouse, which
This is true. Okay, so we're getting to Winnie Palmer. Yeah.
well not just let me finish with John Proctor.
Okay, my
because
bad.
this guy's kind of cool.
Okay.
He's the first sheriff of Westmoreland County.
Okay.
He raises up during the Revolutionary War a militia, and they have this flag. And so John Proctor's 1st Battalion, do you know what the flag looks like?
Is it the snake?
Yes.
The divided snake?
No. So it's a rare flag. It's now stored at the Fort Pitt Museum, and they don't show it all the time. They show reproduction only in certain like June, July, and August will they show the actual flag.
Okay.
But it's like one of the few remaining authentic Revolutionary War flags.
That's kind of cool.
And making it even rarer is that it has the "Don't Tread on Me" snake.
Oh, it's the Don't Tread on Me snake. Oh, I'm dumb.
Right.
Oh, I should have guessed that.
And we still use it as the official like flag for Westmoreland County,
Yeah. Yeah, we do.
which is it's kind of
That is kind of cool. Yeah. Nifty.
But during this time he's like tasked to raise the militia and built this fort, right?
Yeah.
And he's the one who stations like 20 troops at this fort.
Mhm.
Lochry's blockhouse was owned by a Colonel Archibald Lochry.
Archibald.
Yeah.
Nice.
And he's like a friend of John Proctor's.
Okay.
And this is like built on his farmland.
Uh-huh.
The blockhouse, for reference, is at Winnie Palmer Reserve, right?
Which is just within walking distance of campus
Right.
for our listeners.
2 stories. There's a little garden out there.
There is. It's very pretty.
Yeah. And it's interesting because like, if you forget all the noise and stuff, it's like being transported back to that same time period of.
Yeah.
I mean-
If you ignore the 2 or 3 big old roads that are
and the
within
Indian
the
raids.
vicinity. Yeah.
But that's the reason the
Boy.
blockhouse.
Takes me back.
Gosh, man.
Okay.
But so in 1781, Lochry built his blockhouse because they don't have enough ammunition. The government isn't giving them enough ammunition, and these Indian raids, they need more ammunition. And the government just kind of says back, it's like, good luck. We don't really have a lot of ammunition.
You're on your own.
Yeah, kind of. That's pretty much the gist. It's just this big issue of ammunition. But the purpose of the fort and the blockhouse is to like the settlers to like protect themselves to get to an area where there's ammunition. But
so it was an armory kind of.
Pretty much.
Really?
And then he dies like shortly afterwards.
Well, this was in the 1700s. I would be pretty surprised if he was still alive now.
Yeah, he dies in West Virginia after, I think, an Indian raid. So yeah, it's not going well. But
that's rather depressing.
It's interesting that the blockhouse like still exists.
It is.
Like
it really is.
They were thinking. So it got put into different hands over time, right? Yeah. The like top floor kind of like disappeared. I have no idea. Fort Shippen disappears around like 1780.
Okay.
And Forbes Road, like it keeps it becomes like the highway, like it's a major road at this point, right?
Yeah.
But so Lochry's blockhouse is really like the only like thing left of like what happened to like that area. It's kind of forgotten about until the 1990s.
Really?
Yeah, it just changes hands, and the guy, let me figure out his name. He's from the Historical Society, the Latrobe Historical Society.
The Latrobe Area Historical Society.
Exactly. Floyd Eisman,
mm-hmm.
and he's interested in the history of Forbes Road, and he just asks around like St. Vincent College, and one of the people who like maintain the grounds, what's his name? I'm trying to think. Dennis Gilbert.
Okay.
Says that the blockhouse belongs to his uncle Anthony Tadaro, and then
what a lucky break for that guy.
Right.
Wow.
The original blockhouse like is on the bottom floor, but there's been stuff added. So in like 2002, it gets restored.
Nice.
And
that's about it, right? Like it's still there.
Right. Like
just a relic of a time before we even fought for our independence.
Right. Like the wooded area kind of makes it look like you're on the frontier.
Yeah, it does. Fully agree.
Yeah, with the guard and everything. But it's interesting that like this piece of history still exists.
Exactly. And for all of those who are listening, I actually really do highly recommend that you walk down to Lochry's Blockhouse sometime, because it really is a cool way to look back into history. Like, because it looks just like it would have back then.
Fort Shippen doesn't exist anymore.
Fort Shippen is long gone.
Like I should
almost all the forts we talked about, save Fort Pitt and Fort Ligonier, are all gone.
Fort Pitt doesn't even exist anymore. The only thing left of that is the blockhouse.
That's true. Yeah, I mean you can still kind of go to where it was, and you know where it was.
Yeah.
We don't really know where Fort Shippen is. We don't really know where 12 Mile Camp is. We don't really have like a specific.
Yeah, their maps back then are like really bad.
Yeah.
Like everything is just like it's approximately a mile.
Yeah, exactly. So it's really hard to like pinpoint exact location. So I was kind of given the historical marker fault at the beginning of the episode, but I really can't fault them that hard.
Yeah, people wouldn't have known it existed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's good that we have that little historical marker in the first place. Right. So if you guys are ever driving past the airport, going towards McDonald's on Route 30, and you look over and you see this cool little blue sign, 12 Mile Camp.
Oh, yeah. George Washington stayed there. The guy with the cool "Don't Tread on Me" flag stayed there. You can visit the blockhouse still. You can imagine what it was like with all those Indian raids.
Yeah. Do you know if they let people in the blockhouse? I know we're about done here, guys.
Was one of our professors says he does like a class in there sometimes.
What?
Yeah.
Ooh, I'm gonna have to take that class.
And then if you ask, Winnie Palmer is also a nice place by itself.
Indeed.
This is an interesting story. The Walmart was supposed to be built there.
So Latrobe Walmart was supposed to be built on the property that Winnie Palmer invested.
Right, so it would have you would have had this giant parking lot and the Walmart blocking the St. Vincent Basilica.
I'm so glad we went for Winnie Palmer.
Yeah, we really should think like Winnie Palmer, who is the wife of Mr. Arnold Palmer.
Indeed.
It's a really beautiful site.
It really is. Highly recommend, if you guys need to go clear your mind, go take a walk around Winnie Palmer. Take a look at the blockhouse. Very cool part of history.
And you don't need to bring a rifle this time.
Yeah, you don't even need any ammunition to go there this time. Yeah. Pretty cool. So we covered a lot of history in this episode.
Yeah.
You were more ambitious than I anticipated.
I feel like I kind of was maybe too ambitious. Was this an Icarus?
You were still an honorable man.
Did I fly too close to the sun?
That's all right.
Was I
I'll forgive you this once, even though you are currently falling to your death.
Was I the sun?
You were Leo's son. I see what you did there. All right. We should probably cut it here. We've talked about a lot, including the bonus of Whitney Palmer Walmart.
Yeah.
Which could probably be an episode to itself, but we will not. So I think that's going to be it for this episode. So thank you guys so much for listening, and tune in next week to The Pit Stop.
I'm Leo's son.
I'm Stephen Foss. Catch you guys next time.
Hey there, listeners. I'm Matt Boyer, station manager of WSVC Radio. If you like what you're listening to, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and hit that bell button to be notified with all of our newest updates. Every day, one of our shows is releasing a new episode. Stick around and stay tuned.